So, ladies and gentlemen, there was a poster on my recent podcast talking about the arrests at the Kouchibouguac sacred fire in tribute to the memory of Jackie Vautour and an act of peaceful defiance over an ongoing dispute of non-status Indians being knocked off the land in 1969. Now, Jackie Vautour was a non-status Acadian Metis. He didn't have Indian status. The majority of people were kicked off the land were non-status Indians. But what the Jackie Vautour situation was and the family, they're battling for recognition in the courts and by the federal government that they are non-status Acadian Metis. So today we're not going to talk all the machinations of what's been going on, the court dates and all that. That's kind of something I want you to read on your own behalf. But you're probably saying to yourself, what are non-status Indians? What are Acadian Metis or other non-status Indians? Now, according to the federal government, non-status Indians are First Nations people in Canada who are not registered with the federal government or with a band as a treaty with the Crown. They may not qualify for registration for a number of reasons, including they or their ancestors lost or refused Indian status through the Indian Act. They do not identify as Métis, and they were enfranchised through intermarriage, obtaining the right to vote, receiving a university degree, or fleeing simple title to the land. Now, the Indian Act defines Indian status as a legal identity that applies to some Indigenous people in Canada. People with status are known as status Indians. Obviously, you get their Indian card and you get tax breaks and there's other benefits. Now, in 2016, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that non-status Indians and Métis were Indians under the Constitutional Act of 1867. This ruling gave the federal government jurisdiction over them, but there's been little progress on it since then. Now, this does not apply to Acadian Metis, and I tell you why. Under this decision, they're recognizing what's called established Métis federations across Canada, including those affiliated with what they call the Riel Métis in Manitoba and other communities across Canada. Now, the Acadian Métis basically are not, majority of them are not seeking either non-status recognition, or the case of Jackie Vautour, it was used later on to say that they were manipulated by the federal and provincial government to make the park, because it was established in their mind these were poor people that could be ruled over. They didn't want to recognize the partial Indian status because that would have been a legal quagmire. They basically said, we're buying you off the land, we're moving you, and that's all you're going to deal with. Now, people who are identified as non-status Indians in Canada are individuals who are not considered as registered Indians because either they or their ancestors were refused or lost their Indian status through the mechanism of the Indian Act, or do not identify as being a Métis. Now, the government continues to determine who does and does not qualify for Indian status. Eligibility is based on descent in one's family. A person may be eligible for status if at least one parent was entitled to be registered as Indian. Generally, reserve residents are members of a First Nation where they reside. According to the Indian Act, only registered nation members may live permanently on a reserve unless the nation has adopted a residency bylaw that regulates who has the right to live on reserve. Now, people, again, the non-status Indians in New Brunswick, because of the family connections with Mariah, Pabineau, Eel River Bar in Listugush in the North Shore, there would be probably in the low thousands on it, between 3,000 and 5,000, and I'll tell you why. The Lapointes who landed in 1801, there's a lot of descendants. The majority of those people married women from Eel River Bar, or was at Benjamin River, or intertwined with different Aboriginal communities in the North Shore. Now, the descendants of the Lapointes, I think there was like 50 or 60, and now pretty well every Lapointe in the province is Aboriginal in some aspect, but non-status. Now, for example, the Couriers on the North Shore have some connection with the Mariah Reserve. They've intertwined not only with Aboriginal women or men from Mariah and different reserves, but also married into the Lapointes, the Hickeys, Malalis, the Goodens, all the major families. Now, at one point, Lorne on the North Shore had status Indians. That was the biggest unincorporated community in the North Shore for years. I think at one point they had close to 1,500 people. Majority of these people were non-registered or non-status Indians or Acadian Métis. Not too many of the Indians in New Brunswick are related to Indians from Quebec. Mariah has some Acadian blood, so does Listowgush, because of the closeness from Listowgush to Campbellton, and Campbellton is considered pretty well an Acadian community. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the aspect of people saying these are pretendians or whatever, they're looking for rights. Well, it's a case by case basis. There's different Métis federations say we deserve rights of status Indians because our ancestry is partial Indian. They have every option to do that. But in the Jackie Vautour case, they came on established land. Robichaud, Louis Robichaud, the Premier of New Brunswick, and Pierre Trudeau said, we're taking you off the land. We're going to establish a make-work thing to take you out of poverty and make jobs at the park. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was numerous villages, 250-some families. Now, it gets confusing this because white people or pure white people do not understand the aspect of Indian status. Most Acadian Métis like me do not want Indian status because we don't believe in having a card that say we're an Indian. Okay, that's a federal designation, but most of New Brunswick is non-ceded land. We don't have any type of connection with any of the federal laws as they apply right now. It's very, very complicated. Non-status Indians are, for example, how it works. If your grandmother came from Ile-Bar, okay, and you're in your 60s, your children or your descendants would be at least 1/8 or 1/16. You're not Indian status because there's too much of a way. The women that married, Indian women that married non-status men who lost their status, who got it back in recent years, that's a whole lineage too that has to be taken care of. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I want you to do is go on the Canadian Encyclopedia, go on different papers. It's a very interesting paper on the University of Saskatchewan, the website that tell you a little bit on basically what goes on with non-status Indians. Now, according to that University of Saskatchewan article or essay, the mechanism by which people lost their status was an enfranchisement. The most common method of enfranchisement was through intermarriage, whereby a status Indian woman marrying a non-Indian man lost her Indian status, as did her children. This law existed under the Indian Act, was amended in 1985. Other ways in which individuals could be enfranchised was by obtaining the federal right to vote until 1960, feeing simple title to land and receiving a university degree until 1951. Prior to 1976, there was little political representation at the provincial level for non-status Indians in Saskatchewan. Beginning in 1976, the Métis Society of Saskatchewan partnered with the non-status Indians in the province and formed the Association of Métis and Non-Status Indians of Saskatchewan. In 1988, the organization returned to a Métis-only political institution as a result of the recognition of the Métis in the Canadian Constitution. Now, this is not Acadian Métis. That's a whole different ballgame altogether. Nationally, non-status Indians were first represented in 1971 by the Native Council of Canada, now known as the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples. There is currently no territorial affiliate in Saskatchewan. So again, extremely complicated. Might be anywhere between 10 and 20,000 non-status Indians in New Brunswick from the 1800s, where they did have status back then, but because of intermarriage and they married unilingual Acadian and French individuals, or they lost their status through, again, marrying white people. It's kind of freaky, but in New Brunswick, ladies and gentlemen, in the Kouchibouguac region, in Batters, Campbellton, Kedgwick, near the Listowgush border, Ile-Bar, Papineau, again, there's a high percentage, upwards of 10 to 20% of people in those regions either are status Indians or non-status. But when it comes to Acadian Métis, the federal government, through different Supreme Court rulings, have determined the Acadian Métis have no status. It's a made-up thing. But as we like to say in previous podcasts, we exist. I'm just as important as an Acadian Métis to the people in Kouchibouguac, Campbellton, Batters, Lorne, Jacket River, Pitterush, all those regions. And, where did we come from? If the French came in the 1800s and people from Quebec, there was no women to marry. They married Aboriginal women, for whatever reason, true love or existing or whatever. So non-status Indians, again, one of the most strangest debates of the last 40 years in Canada. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your support on these podcasts we're doing to tell both sides of what's going on in Kouchibouguac with the Acadian Metis file. Let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share what you think. Bye.